An Eye for an Eye. Part 6.
I told you that the planet was to be spared until we had enough Quilax for the main event,
the Emperor of the Hylexans thought at his second-in-command. The Emperor of the Hylexans was bright gold, all except for his eye, though even then the large pupil on his single eye was still gold too. He was also somewhat larger and certainly more powerful than any of his subordinates. One touch of his tentacles could vaporize almost any life form into nothing but dust. The Emperor reached his tentacles out to surround his second-in-command.
Emperor, please, we only destroyed the planet as we know that a city of those monsters had managed to flee into space using magic,
the second-in-command pleaded.
And where is this city now? We don't know, sir, but their magics are primitive. We shall find them. You have 30 minutes or else,
the Emperor said, as it moved its tentacles to within a fraction of an inch towards its lieutenant's trembling, amorphous body before leaving.
We need to find them fast,
the second-in-command ordered its subordinates.
Our scanners can't pick up any traces of magic. For all intents and purposes, they have vanished from this solar system, sir.
They can't have,
the lieutenant thought in sheer terror as he tried to desperately think of an idea.
It seems we have no choice,
he replied with regret.
We shall have to unleash the Hylexans.
There was silence for a few moments.
I understand you are scared of failing the Emperor, but I will not miss out on seeing the end of the wretched Quilax, do you understand? The Hylexans are our most powerful magics. They corrupt and devour any other magic in the nearby area. If we unleash it in the solar system near where the traces of magic the Quilax have left behind are, then we'll destroy their city.
You could destroy all of them. You could destroy our entire fleet,
the subordinate insisted.
Either I do nothing and miss out on what I've waited for my whole life, or I take the chance and go down in history as the Hylexan who destroyed the last of the Quilax. This is not open for discussion. You will obey,
he ordered his minions. The city, meanwhile, had almost reached the end of the solar system. Denika had been forced to slow it down, as the faster it went, the more unstable the city's structure became. The Quilax had been singing the praises of the circus folk throughout most of the journey. They had even started to carry Carleen and Ashley around the city. Carleen felt a bit awkward about the whole thing, but didn't want to be rude to the people by shooing them away. The circus master and Ashley both revelled in their praise meanwhile. For Ashley, who had spent her entire life on the streets feeling worthless, it was an almost unbelievable feeling for people to view her as a hero. She felt like crying. The circus master, on the other hand, always loved attention, and here was no different. He even started to boast about his previous victories and adventures to the children, which made Denika roll her eyes. Honestly, we're far from safe now. What's he playing at? Denika thought to herself. He really can be the most unsufferable braggart. Carleen managed to break away from the crowd, who were all gathered around the circus master, and lit up a cigarette. She hadn't had one since before they landed on the Quilax's former home planet, and she really needed it after the day she'd had. "What's that?" one of the Quilax asked. It was the young female Quilax that she, Ashley, the circus master and Denika had encountered when the city's floor had engulfed them. Her real name was Askiro.
"Oh, just a little thing from my world, love. It's not good for you, but since I'm dead anyway, it doesn't matter,"
Carleen explained. Askiro wasn't sure what she meant by that, but felt it was probably best not to ask. "Thank you for all you've done for us," Askiro said, "though I think your friend over there is being a little bit premature."
"Well, I don't know him that well, darling," Carleen said. "From what I can see, he can be a little bit over-enthusiastic about things, to say the least," she continued. He really does mean well, though.
I'm not sure he and the rest of you aren't wasting your time,
Asciro replied with regret.
Don't say that, love. We managed to get away from those monsters, and we'll do it again if they come after us.
It's not that, it's just.
What?
Our people, the Quilax. I'm not sure we deserve a second chance. If you'd arrived earlier in our history, we would have been the monsters you'd be fighting against. The only reason we're not is because we ended up creating bigger monsters,
Asciro explained.
You know what your people did was wrong,
Carleen insisted.
It shouldn't have taken a genocide to show us, though. I can't help but feel if we do get somewhere safe, build ourselves up and mastered magic, then we'd go back to being the monsters. Maybe it would be better if you just let the Hylexans take their revenge and end the cycle here,
Asciro said with regret.
It won't end with that. You can end it by surviving and not following in your predecessors' footsteps. I come from a race of monsters too. You're lucky enough not to know them, but most of my people are worse than the Hylexans. I've found a way not to let what I am define who I am. Your people need to do the same,
Carleen assured Asciro. Ashley called on Carleen. She wasn't able to entertain the crowd with her adventures, as she had had so few of them. She also wasn't eager to discuss her previous adventures with the vampires either. Ashley hoped Carleen could entertain the crowd with some of her exploits.
All right, love, I'm coming,
Carleen said.
Maybe I can sing, though I don't know how you lot feel about singing. Is that a thing in your race?
What's singing?
One of the crowd asked, to Carleen's frustration. The strange boy, meanwhile, as always, just stood at the side, not saying or doing anything while all this was going on. Keptis sat at the very edge of the city, staring out into the endless black void of space where the Quilax's home planet had once been. None of the Quilax themselves could bear to look back that way, which was another reason they were all so focused on the circus folk. Florence felt she had to speak to the Martian. She knew that she, along with Carleen, were probably the last people Keptis wanted to speak with now, but she couldn't leave him like this.
Keptis, I'm sorry I wasn't able to stop them from hurting you, Florence said.
You can't begin to imagine how they hurt me,
he said to the siren.
Please, you can talk to me. You can tell me what they did to you in the pit.
The Martian looked down.
Their magic made me see Mars as it once was. I saw my friends, my family, my children, all alive again. I had no memory of what happened to my people, of the circus, of the other worlds. I was actually happy.
The Martian began to tear up.
Then right in the middle of playing with my children in the beautiful Martian fields, it all began to fade. Memories of the vampires ravaging my world began to creep back in, of how I had brought them to my planet. The world around me began to waste. The fields dried up and were replaced with a red, barren desert. My family right in front of me, they began to rot away. Losing them again was even more painful than the first time. As soon as it was over and I remembered, they thrust me back into the dream world with no memory, only to rip it from me again. Each time it was over, I remembered all of the previous times they had torn it from me. If you hadn't saved me, I would have had to go through the pain of losing my family over and over again, forever.
I'm so sorry, Keptis. I can't imagine.
You're right, you can't,
the Martian snapped before continuing.
I'm sorry. It's just, well, you know what you are and how hard it is for me. But you've saved me from the worst hell twice over now, and I won't forget that. Thank you, Florence.
The Martian looked back at the Quilax, celebrating the heroes who had rescued them.
Now these poor people have to go through the same thing I did. They're in denial. They can't believe the horror they've witnessed, so they're putting all their faith into us. Sadly, I don't think I'm going to be much use to them.
You can't let those monsters win, Keptis. They're cowards. They had to resort to the lowest, dirtiest tactics to try and beat you. That shows that they're terrified of you and of us. The two's conversation was interrupted by the sound of Denika screaming. All of a sudden, Denika felt an intense pain surge right throughout her entire body. The circus master instantly rushed to her aid, as did the others, but there was nothing any of them could do.
Denika, please,
the circus master said frantically. Denika couldn't even speak, she was in so much pain. All she could do was scream.
We have to get her back to the tent,
the circus master said as he lifted her up. The entire city, however, soon began to shake.
The Hylexans have found us,
one of the Quilax shouted in fear, but there were no ships around.
I don't know what's going on, but don't worry, we'll stop it, whatever it is,
the circus master said as he ran back to the tent. The inside of the tent, however, was glowing bright red. The engine was still functioning, but it was fluctuating to the point where it was threatening to explode.
Dear God,
the circus master said as he ran towards the fountain, placing Denika gently down first.
What are you doing? She needs help,
Ashley shouted as she and Carleen entered the tent.
We'll all be dead if I don't act fast,
the circus master said as he examined the fountain. The circus master tried to use a magical chant, but as soon as he did, he fell to the floor in agony. As Ashley tried to help him up, several beams of fire began to shoot from the fountain of the tent. The water of the fountain was now red, boiling hot and running over. Ashley pulled the weakened circus master out, whilst Carleen lifted Denika over her shoulders to safety. Outside, Keptis's flaming saw began to vanish as the whole city shook violently. The section of the city the tent Carleen, Keptis, Florence, Denika and Ashley were on began to break away from the rest of the city. Worse, as the magic began to fade, the Quilax, Ashley and Denika began to choke, as only the magic was keeping the air in. Carleen's beehive, which was made of magic, started to swell, and she threw it off in a deserted area just as it burst, causing several weapons to fly out. The circus master, meanwhile, jumped to his feet, having recovered. Unfortunately, however, the city was beginning to break in two, with the side the circus master, Carleen, Ashley, Florence, Keptis and the rest were on also beginning to break into pieces. The circus master jumped to the other side, whilst carrying Ashley, whilst Carleen did the same for Denika, and finally Florence carried Keptis to the other side. The strange boy was already on the other side of the city anyway, having still not moved throughout the entire ordeal. Several of the Quilax tried to jump across too, but they all failed to reach the other side. Carleen, the circus master and Florence jumped back across to try and get more of the Quilax, but they only managed to grab a handful of them. Soon the other side broke into tiny bits, and hundreds of Quilax drifted into space. The circus folk and the remaining Quilax, Askiro and the general among them, could only watch in horror. The tent also drifted off with the pieces of the city too, and as it floated off, the rest of the city began to break up and crumble. The Quilax fled in all directions, and more were crushed by the falling buildings or drifted off as the gravity began to fade. Ashley nearly floated away, but the circus master held on to her and then grabbed onto the road, digging his claws in. Unfortunately, however, this meant that he couldn't help anyone else, and the vandal was forced to watch as several more innocent men, women and children around him floated away to their deaths. One of them was the general, who pleaded with the circus master to help him in his final moments.
"Please, we can't come this far and end like this," he screamed,
as he floated off to his death. Sadly, the circus master couldn't even make out what he was saying, as the magic that translated their language had also been destroyed. Ashley started to choke, as all the air in the city began to fade. She even passed out. Florence and Keptis, meanwhile, both almost drifted into space, as the area they were in's gravity completely faded. But at the last minute, Florence managed to hold onto a nearby building and then grabbed onto Keptis. The strange boy, meanwhile, held on for dear life with his claws, but still there was no expression, even in this situation. Carleen was unable to grab onto anything and started to float off into space with Denika. The circus master tried another enchantment. Once again, pain ran through his body, but the circus master managed to fight through the pain and complete the enchantment that shielded Denika from the lack of atmosphere as she and Carleen drifted outwards.
What's happening?"
Denika said while still dazed.
"Those octopus wankers. They've performed some kind of spell that's turning our magics against us. With the magic in your body it would have killed you, but the circus master, it seems, managed to put a shield around you. He couldn't apply it around the tent, it was too big. Now it's gone, and this whole city's breaking apart," Carleen explained.
"There's nothing we can do," Denika said, as she looked around at the grim sight.
Denika, if we work together, we can maybe put a force field around part of the city," the circus master shouted.
"It won't hold," she replied.
"It's our only choice."
As more of the city began to break to bits, the building Florence held onto started to crumble. Just as all seemed lost, a blue field appeared around the city, with Denika and Carleen barely being caught within it. Barely 200 Quilax were left, however. Most of the city had crumbled, and around the city were the floating corpses and wreckage.
"We did it,"
the circus master said. "It won't last for long. And we were only able to save a couple of 100 feet, if that," Denika said, as she looked around at the corpses and the crying, whimpering survivors.
"Only a couple of 100 of them survived."
"You pathetic excuses for heroes,"
one of the Quilax shouted at the circus master, with the magic that translated their language having now been restored.
"All that time you spent boasting and we were in danger." "I had no idea they had magics that powerful," the circus master tried to explain.
"Maybe if you'd—"
Askiro interrupted.
"Enough! Without them we would never have gotten this far,"
she screamed at the angry crowd, who started to back down.
"Thank you,"
the circus master said meekly.
"I meant it, even if it doesn't matter now anyway,"
Askiro said. "We have to get to the circus," Denika said. "If we could do that, then together we could put a force field around it and use it to power this rock out of here."
"If we work together, Denika, we can make what's left of this city move," the circus master replied.
"Doing so could break what's left of this city apart."
"I hate to say it, but it's our only chance. This force field has a few minutes at best," the circus master said grimly.
Together, the circus master and Denika started chanting. The city started to move forward towards the circus, which caused more rubble to fall from the remaining building and the blue force field to begin to flicker in and out. The surviving Quilax all huddled together in fear, but what was left of the city managed to reach the circus, pushing its way past the floating corpses of Quilax along the way. As soon as it reached the circus, however, a large yellow beam appeared around the circus and then around the city. To his horror, the circus master could see dozens of Hylexan crafts come into view above.
"Of course the invisibility spell wore off," They've got us now,
the circus master said. Hearing the circus master of all people say that sent a shiver down the rest of the circus folks' spines, but they knew he was right. The Quilax all screamed in terror and begged the circus folk to help them, but there was nothing they could do.
Yes, we have them,
The Hylexan commander said.
There's probably only a handful left on that tiny rock. The Emperor will not be pleased there's so few. Those magics could have easily backfired on us too. I told you we should have waited to try and breach their magics in a more practical way,
one of the underlings thought.
You dare to question my orders? We have enough to make their deaths an event this galaxy will never forget. Our revenge will soon be complete.
The commander replied, as his single cruel eye looked down on his terrified prey below. To be continued.